In the summer of 1943, the sun scorched the hills of Sicily as German troops moved cautiously through the narrow roads, confident in their superior numbers and years of experience. Yet in the midst of this campaign, something small and seemingly insignificant would shake the confidence of seasoned officers and force them to confront a reality they had long ignored. Hidden in the dusty rubble of a recently abandoned American position, a single 5-pound handheld device lay unnoticed at first. It was the SCR 536 Handie Talkie, a radio so compact and efficient that it would soon reveal the vast technological gap between the Allies and the Axis. When German soldiers picked it up, they initially underestimated it. A small black box with a coiled cord and a simple push-to-talk button could hardly seem threatening. Yet within hours, their understanding of modern warfare would be challenged, and their assumptions about their own communications superiority shattered. American engineers had been quietly revolutionizing military communications for years. Edwin Armstrong, one of the most brilliant minds in radio technology, had pioneered frequency modulation, or FM radio, in the 1930s. His invention reduced static, improved clarity, and allowed signals to travel further with less interference. In the hands of ordinary soldiers, FM radio might have remained a laboratory curiosity, but in the chaos of World War II, it became a force multiplier. The SCR 536 and its larger counterpart, the SCR 300 backpack radio, were not just radios, they were instruments of battlefield intelligence, enabling soldiers to coordinate attacks, call for reinforcements, and adapt to the shifting tides of combat in real time. The SCR 536, weighing just 5 pounds, was portable enough for a single soldier to carry into the thick of battle. Its reach was modest by modern standards, around 3 miles under ideal conditions, but the clarity of communication and ease of use made it revolutionary. The larger SCR 300, designed to be worn like a backpack, extended communication up to 8 miles, creating a network of connectivity that German forces simply could not match. In Sicily, as the German officers studied the captured devices, they realized that the Allied forces were no longer relying on cumbersome field telephones, runners, or primitive signal flags. These small radios were giving American troops a command and control advantage that could turn an ambush into a coordinated counterattack, and a chaotic advance into a calculated maneuver. The capture of the SCR 536 was more than a tactical curiosity. It was a window into American industrial capability and inventive genius. Henryk Magnuski, a Polish refugee working at a Chicago factory, had played a crucial role in its design. Magnuski combined rigorous engineering principles with an understanding of the practical needs of soldiers on the front lines. His work ensured that the radios were rugged enough to survive dust, mud, and the occasional drop, yet simple enough for a soldier with no technical training to operate under fire. The Germans, who relied on radios that were heavy, complex, and often unreliable, could hardly believe the combination of reliability and simplicity they now held in their hands. As German experts examined the SCR 536, reports later revealed that they described the device as extremely effective and far ahead of anything in our arsenal. For officers accustomed to expecting technical parity or superiority, the assessment was alarming. It became immediately clear that American troops could coordinate over distances and terrain that would have been impossible for German units to manage with their own equipment. This insight was not just academic, it had direct consequences for planning defenses and anticipating Allied movements. The mere existence of this tiny radio forced German commanders to rethink assumptions they had taken for granted, questioning everything from troop deployment to the reliability of their own communications networks. The presence of the SCR 536 in Sicily also marked a turning point in the broader understanding of technological warfare. World War II was no longer just about sheer numbers or firepower. It was about who could transmit information faster, more reliably, and with greater precision. A 5-pound box changed the battlefield calculus, allowing American officers to react to threats instantly and synchronize attacks across multiple units. From calling artillery strikes to coordinating infantry movements, these radios transformed what had once been chaotic engagements into carefully orchestrated operations. In retrospect, the capture of the SCR-536 highlights how innovation can reshape the outcomes of battles in unexpected ways. While tanks, airplanes, and artillery dominate the popular imagination of World War II, it was often communication technology that determined who would hold the initiative and who would be forced onto the defensive. The story of this single captured radio is a testament to American ingenuity, the vision of engineers like Magnuski and Armstrong, and the industrial might that turned advanced ideas into mass-produced tools of war. As the German officers packed up the SCR-536 and reported their findings, they could hardly have imagined the ripple effects it would have. In the months that followed, similar radios would spread across the European and Pacific theaters, empowering Allied forces to coordinate with unprecedented speed and accuracy. For the Germans in Sicily that summer, an encounter with a small American radio was a stark and humbling lesson. In this war, technology and innovation were decisive, and in this domain, they were falling behind. The story of the SCR-536 is a reminder that sometimes the smallest tools reveal the largest truths. In the chaos of battle, the weight of steel and the roar of guns are visible, but the invisible threads of communication, linking one soldier to another, one unit to command, can be far more decisive. The 5-pound Handie Talkie was not just a device, it was a symbol of foresight, ingenuity, and the quiet but transformative power of information. As we follow the unfolding of the Sicilian campaign, it becomes clear that in war, sometimes the most unexpected discoveries define the course of history, and that a single moment, a single captured radio, can illuminate the vast gulf between the old ways and the new.
Behind every revolutionary military tool lies the story of the minds who made it possible. While soldiers in the field wielded the SCR-536 Handie Talkie and the SCR-300 backpack radio, the true genius was often hidden in the quiet factories and laboratories far from the front lines. One of the most significant figures in this story was Edwin Armstrong, the American inventor whose work in frequency modulation, or FM radio, transformed how signals could travel across the battlefield. Before Armstrong's innovation, radio transmissions were plagued by static and interference, often rendering communications unreliable in critical moments. Armstrong's FM technology reduced these limitations dramatically, producing clear, strong signals that could be transmitted over long distances without distortion. This was not just a technical improvement, it was a strategic advantage, allowing Allied forces to coordinate complex operations in ways that the Axis powers could not anticipate. Yet while Armstrong laid the theoretical groundwork, it was engineers like Henryk Magnuski who translated these ideas into practical, usable tools for soldiers. Magnuski, a Polish refugee who had fled Europe in the face of war, joined a Chicago-based factory where he dedicated himself to the design of portable radios. He understood that the challenges of the battlefield demanded more than just theoretical excellence. Radios needed to be lightweight, durable, and operable by men under extreme stress. Magnuski and his team worked tirelessly to ensure that the SCR-536 could withstand dust, mud, heat, and the occasional drop from a soldier's pack. Every dial, cord, and switch was carefully considered to balance simplicity with efficiency, ensuring that a soldier could send or receive messages even while under fire. The SCR-536 was only 5 pounds, yet it packed capabilities that far exceeded the expectations of anyone accustomed to older field communication systems. Its smaller size allowed for unprecedented mobility, letting frontline troops remain in constant contact with command without being tethered by cumbersome wires or relying on messengers who could be intercepted or delayed. The SCR-300, slightly larger but still manageable as a backpack, extended the range of communication up to 8 miles, effectively creating a wireless network that could link multiple units simultaneously. These innovations required not just technical brilliance, but a deep understanding of military needs, logistical constraints, and the realities of combat. Magnuski's background as a refugee engineer was instrumental in his approach. He had experienced firsthand the disruption and chaos of war, and he knew that soldiers in the field required tools that were intuitive and reliable. His designs reflected a careful study of human behavior under stress, combining rugged engineering with ergonomics. The coiled cords, push-to-talk buttons, and simplified interfaces were not arbitrary. They were solutions to practical problems that could mean the difference between life and death in combat. These radios were not just machines, they were extensions of the soldiers themselves, enabling them to act with speed, coordination, and confidence. The significance of these innovations extended beyond the individual soldier. In the months following the introduction of the SCR-536 and SCR-300, the Allied forces began to see dramatic improvements in operational coordination. Artillery units could respond more quickly to infantry requests, supply lines could be rerouted in real time, and commanders could adjust tactics instantly based on evolving battlefield conditions. German forces, accustomed to slower, less reliable communication, struggled to match this pace. The capture of an SCR-536 in Sicily provided them with a rare glimpse into this technological advantage, and their assessments confirmed what American engineers had long known. The Allies had created a communication system that was both highly effective and difficult to counter. The collaboration between Armstrong's theoretical genius and Magnuski's practical engineering exemplifies the power of combining visionary ideas with skilled implementation. It was a reminder that technological superiority in war is rarely the product of a single invention. It emerges when innovation is paired with production capability, testing, and thoughtful design. The industrial capacity of the United States ensured that these radios could be mass-produced and distributed to forces across multiple theaters of war, allowing every unit to benefit from the same advantage once reserved for specialized signal corps. As the radios reached the front lines, soldiers quickly realized their potential. Reports from the field described a newfound clarity in communications, faster response times, and the ability to coordinate complex maneuvers with units miles apart. A single handheld device allowed officers to orchestrate actions that would have previously required multiple messengers, signaling stations, or telegraph lines. In essence, Magnuski's design democratized advanced communications, putting unprecedented power into the hands of ordinary soldiers. The story of these engineers also highlights a broader lesson about resilience and adaptation. Magnuski had fled his homeland in the face of overwhelming adversity, yet he turned that personal upheaval into innovation that would help defeat one of the most formidable military machines of the time. Armstrong's persistence in perfecting FM radio, despite skepticism and legal battles, similarly demonstrates how vision and perseverance can reshape history. Together, their work bridged theory and practice, science and application, turning abstract knowledge into decisive battlefield tools. By the summer of 1943, when German officers first encountered the SCR-536, they were not just facing a new piece of equipment, they were confronting the results of years of concentrated American ingenuity, careful engineering, and industrial power. The radios captured in Sicily represented more than a technological breakthrough. They symbolized a shift in how wars would be fought, emphasizing speed, connectivity, and the ability to act on information faster than the enemy. For soldiers in the field, these radios would become lifelines.
For engineers like Magnusky, they were a proof that thoughtful design could save lives and change the course of history.
The legacy of Armstrong and Magnusky lives on in the way modern military and civilian communications operate. Their work illustrates that innovation is most potent when it is applied to solve real-world problems under real-world pressures. As we move from the quiet factories of Chicago to the contested hills of Sicily, the story of these men reminds us that behind every effective tool on the battlefield is a human story of intelligence, creativity, and determination, shaping events in ways that often go unnoticed but are felt profoundly in the outcomes of war.
In the thick of battle, a soldier's ability to communicate can mean the difference between victory and disaster. The SCR-536 Handie Talkie and the SCR-300 backpack radio were not just gadgets, they were revolutionary tools that redefined how armies coordinated their movements. Weighing only 5 pounds, the SCR-536 was small enough to fit into a soldier's kit, yet powerful enough to transform a chaotic battlefield into a network of connected units. Its simple design belied the sophistication inside, an FM radio system capable of transmitting clear signals over a few miles, resistant to the static and interference that plagued older AM radios. Soldiers could carry it into the front lines, keep their hands free for combat, and still maintain a vital link to their commanders. The larger SCR-300, often referred to as the walkie-talkie backpack, extended this capability significantly. Worn like a pack and weighing around 35 pounds, it could transmit signals up to 8 miles under ideal conditions. This allowed entire squads, companies, and even battalions to remain in contact across difficult terrain. In an era before satellite communications, GPS, or digital encryption, the SCR-300 created a mobile, reliable, and relatively secure communications network. This was crucial in operations that required rapid response, coordinated artillery, or synchronized attacks over miles of rugged terrain. For the first time, field commanders could see the battlefield in real time, making decisions informed by the actual positions and movements of their troops, rather than relying on reports sent hours earlier. Durability was a key feature of both radios. Combat conditions are harsh. Dust, mud, heat, rain, and shocks from accidental drops could easily destroy poorly designed equipment. Magnusky and his team anticipated these challenges, designing the SCR-536 to be robust without compromising portability. Rubberized housings, sturdy dials, and reliable internal components meant that a radio could withstand the rough conditions of Europe, North Africa, or the Pacific. The SCR-300, with its larger size, incorporated additional ruggedization, including metal casing and reinforced straps, ensuring that it could survive the harshest campaigns while carrying enough power to transmit over longer distances. These design considerations were critical because a radio that failed at a crucial moment could cost lives, stall operations, or even lead to the collapse of an entire unit's coordination. The radios were also engineered with simplicity in mind. Unlike German equipment, which often required specialized operators and technical expertise, American radios could be used effectively by ordinary soldiers with minimal training. The SCR-536 featured a single push-to-talk button, an intuitive volume control, and a straightforward antenna, making it accessible even under stress. The SCR-300, despite its complexity and size, was designed to be operated by one man, with basic training enabling efficient use in combat conditions. This democratization of communication allowed every soldier in a unit to function as a node in a broader network, enhancing responsiveness and flexibility on the battlefield. In Sicily, the impact of these radios was immediately apparent. Soldiers could coordinate artillery strikes in real time, call for reinforcements, and relay intelligence about enemy movements instantly.
Where previously commanders had relied on runners, signal flags, or telegraph lines that could be intercepted or destroyed, radios allowed continuous communication, often deciding the outcome of engagements before German forces could react. German troops, when they captured SCR-536 units, noted their effectiveness and marveled at the clarity and reliability. For the first time, they faced an opponent whose units could act in unison across terrain that would have been fragmented traditional communications. The ability to coordinate on the move was another transformative aspect. The SCR-300 allowed infantry units to advance while maintaining contact with command, artillery, and neighboring units, enabling complex maneuvers that had previously been difficult or impossible. A commander could adjust plans in real time, responding to unexpected enemy positions, terrain obstacles, or logistical issues. This flexibility turned static, predictable battles into dynamic, coordinated operations and gave Allied forces a strategic edge in multiple theaters. Power supply was another technical breakthrough. Batteries were compact but efficient, providing several hours of reliable operation. Soldiers carried spare cells, but even a single battery could sustain crucial communication during critical moments. This attention to practical details ensured that the radios were not just theoretical innovations, but functional, dependable tools that could operate continuously in the field. The radios also influenced morale. Soldiers who could speak directly to their commanders or coordinate with nearby units felt more confident and empowered. This psychological effect cannot be overstated. Units with reliable communication were more likely to execute complex operations successfully, maintain cohesion under fire, and respond to rapidly changing situations with clarity and precision. By contrast, units without these radios experienced confusion, delays, and increased vulnerability, highlighting the decisive role of technology in modern warfare. The SCR-36 and SCR-300 were not just tools, they were symbols of American industrial ingenuity applied to military necessity. While the German army had capable weapons and experienced soldiers, their communication systems were heavy, cumbersome, and often unreliable. The capture of a Handie Talkie in Sicily exposed this gap dramatically. German officers quickly recognized that Allied forces could coordinate across distances and terrain in ways that German units could not match. It was a wake-up call. Technological innovation could shift the balance of power as much as tanks, planes, or artillery. Ultimately, the impact of these radios extended far beyond a single battlefield. From Sicily to Normandy, from North Africa to the islands of the Pacific, the SCR-36 and SCR-300 enabled operational coordination that would have been unthinkable only a few years earlier. They allowed Allied forces to move faster, react quicker, and strike with precision. In many ways, these small, seemingly simple devices helped redefine how wars were fought, proving that the mastery of information, communication, and coordination could be as decisive as firepower. As soldiers clutched their Handie Talkies or slung the backpack radios over their shoulders, they carried more than equipment. They carried the advantage of connectivity, speed, and control. These radios were a quiet revolution, transforming the chaos of battle into an organized, coordinated force. They demonstrated that in the modern battlefield, communication is power, and mastery of technology can turn the tide of war. The story of the SCR-36 and SCR-300 reminds us that sometimes the smallest tools, carried in the hands of ordinary soldiers, can have extraordinary consequences, shaping not just individual battles, but the outcome of an entire conflict.
When German officers first examined the captured SCR-536 Handie Talkie in Sicily, they were confronted with a reality that would shake their confidence and force a re-evaluation of their entire communications strategy. These small, seemingly simple devices were nothing like the radios they relied upon. German field radios were bulky, heavy, and complex, often requiring specialized operators and careful maintenance. They depended on large batteries, cumbersome antennas, and were prone to interference, especially in fast-moving combat scenarios. In contrast, the American SCR-536 could be carried by a single soldier, operated intuitively, and delivered clear, reliable communication over several miles. The Germans quickly realized they were facing not just a new piece of equipment, but a demonstration of a fundamental technological gap. Reports from the German army described their astonishment. Officers noted the clarity of transmissions and the efficiency of these devices, admitting that the radios were far ahead of anything in their own arsenal. This acknowledgement was not mere admiration, it was a recognition of strategic vulnerability. Communication is the backbone of military operations, and the Germans understood that without reliable radios, they could not effectively coordinate attacks, respond to threats, or manage defenses against a mobile and well-connected opponent. In Sicily, the capture of the SCR-536 served as a wake-up call. The Allies had achieved an operational advantage that extended beyond firepower, training, or numbers. The gap between German and American communications technology was rooted in different approaches to design and production. German radios, while powerful in some respects, prioritized technical complexity over usability. They were often difficult to repair in the field and required operators with specialized skills. By contrast, American engineers focused on ruggedness, simplicity, and mass production. Radios like the SCR-536 and SCR-300 were designed to work reliably under combat conditions, be easy to operate for any soldier, and be produced in large numbers without sacrificing quality. This industrial advantage allowed the Allies to equip entire divisions with reliable communications, while Germany struggled to supply frontline units with sufficient numbers of functional radios. The practical implications of this gap became immediately apparent. In battle, American units could coordinate artillery strikes, infantry movements, and supply lines in real time. Orders could be issued and executed within minutes rather than hours, enabling rapid adaptation to changing conditions. German forces, dependent on slower methods of communication, often found themselves reacting to events rather than controlling them. The captured radios provided German officers with a rare insight into this operational disparity. They saw firsthand that Allied troops could act with cohesion and precision, connecting different units over distances and terrain that would have fragmented German communication networks. German military engineers attempted to study and reverse engineer the SCR-536, but they faced significant challenges. The radios were compact, carefully engineered, and designed for durability. Internal components were protected against moisture, dust, and impact, making disassembly and replication difficult without specialized knowledge and manufacturing equipment that was often in short supply. This highlighted not only the ingenuity of American engineers, but also the importance of industrial capacity in translating innovation into battlefield advantage. It was one thing to invent advanced technology, it was another to produce it in sufficient numbers and with consistent quality. The Allies had achieved both. The psychological impact on German officers cannot be overstated. Facing a technologically superior enemy in terms of communication created a sense of unease and urgency. Commanders realized that their traditional reliance on rigid hierarchies and pre-planned movements was insufficient against an opponent capable of dynamic coordination. The SCR-536 and SCR-300 exemplified a shift in the nature of warfare. Success increasingly depended on speed, flexibility, and the ability to act on timely information. In many ways, the radios captured in Sicily foreshadowed the broader challenges Germany would face throughout the war as the Allies leveraged technology to maintain operational superiority.
This technological gap also influenced German tactical decisions. Units became more cautious, defensive, and fragmented because they could not match the pace of Allied communications. The inability to coordinate across distances left many German operations disjointed, reactive, and vulnerable to encirclement or surprise attacks. Every captured radio underscored the growing disparity, making it clear that while Germany could match or even exceed Allied firepower in some areas, they were falling behind in the domain of information and coordination, which was becoming just as decisive as tanks, planes, or artillery. Allied commanders, in contrast, recognized the value of their communications advantage and exploited it extensively. The radios enabled synchronized operations across multiple theaters, from Sicily to Normandy and the Pacific Islands. Artillery units could fire on targets called in by forward infantry in real time. Supply convoys could adjust routes based on immediate intelligence. Infantry units could adapt formations instantly based on enemy movements. The SCR-536 and SCR-300 were more than radios. They were instruments of battlefield intelligence, situational awareness, and tactical dominance. The capture of the radios also left German engineers and officers with a sobering realization about American industrial and inventive capacity. While they might have had brilliant individual scientists or engineers, the United States combined vision with production, turning cutting-edge concepts into deployable, reliable tools for millions of soldiers. This combination of innovation, usability, and scale made the Allied advantage almost impossible to overcome through conventional countermeasures alone. In the months following Sicily, the lessons learned from captured radios reinforced a strategic truth. Communication technology was no longer a supporting tool. It was a decisive factor in modern warfare. The SCR-536 and SCR-300 represented the ability to coordinate, adapt, and execute operations faster and more efficiently than an opponent who relied on outdated systems. German officers facing this reality were forced to acknowledge a fundamental truth of the conflict. The war was increasingly determined not just by brute force alone, but by the speed and clarity of information on the battlefield. By examining the SCR-536, German forces gained insight into the American approach to war: simple, effective, and massively produced technology that empowered soldiers and commanders alike. It was a stark reminder that technological superiority is not measured solely by firepower or armor, but by the ability to connect units, transmit orders, and act decisively on information. This realization shaped German strategies for the remainder of the war, highlighting both their limitations and the transformative power of Allied innovation. The story of these captured radios serves as a lesson in the profound impact of technology on warfare. Small, portable devices like the SCR-536 and SCR-300 could shift the balance of power, influence strategy, and alter the course of campaigns. The Germans encountered these radios in Sicily, revealed a gap that was not easily closed, demonstrating that in modern war, information and the ability to communicate it can be just as lethal as any weapon. It was a pivotal moment that underscored how innovation, industry, and foresight could redefine the rules of battle and establish advantages that no conventional tactic could easily overcome.
As the Allied forces advanced from Sicily through Italy, across France, and into the Pacific Islands, the impact of reliable communication became increasingly evident. The SCR-536 Handie Talkie and SCR-300 backpack radio were no longer experimental tools. They had become essential instruments of warfare, shaping the outcomes of battles and campaigns. From Normandy to the jungles of the Pacific, these radios allowed commanders to coordinate complex operations with precision, speed, and flexibility that the enemy could not match. Soldiers carried them into combat not just as equipment, but as lifelines,
connecting them to their units, their commanders, and ultimately to the broader strategic plan. The radios enabled real-time coordination on an unprecedented scale. In amphibious landings, infantry units could call for artillery support as they advanced, adjusting fire based on the exact location of enemy positions. Tanks and armored vehicles could maneuver alongside infantry, maintaining contact despite terrain obstacles, weather, and enemy interference. Supply convoys could reroute in response to changing battlefield conditions, avoiding ambushes and ensuring that troops remained equipped and effective. The ability to transmit and receive information transformed the tempo of operations, turning what might have been disorganized advances into highly coordinated campaigns. In the Pacific, the value of these radios was particularly striking. Island-hopping operations required precise timing, coordination of multiple forces, and rapid adaptation to unexpected challenges. The SCR-300, with its extended range, allowed units separated by miles of dense jungle or treacherous coastline to maintain a continuous communications link. Forward observers could relay intelligence about enemy positions back to command. Air support could be directed with accuracy, and reinforcements could arrive exactly where they were needed. In many engagements, the presence of these radios meant the difference between a successful landing and a costly stalemate. The radios also played a critical role in combined arms operations. Infantry, artillery, armor, and air units could now operate as a cohesive system rather than isolated elements. Orders issued from a forward command post could be executed immediately, with feedback relayed back up the chain to allow adjustments. This created a cycle of rapid information and response that gave the Allies a distinct operational advantage. German and Japanese forces, lacking comparable, portable, and reliable communication devices, were often forced to react slowly, leaving them at a strategic and tactical disadvantage. Beyond the battlefield, these radios influenced broader military strategy. Commanders could plan operations with confidence, knowing that units in the field could communicate reliably. Complex maneuvers involving multiple divisions, coordinated airstrikes, or simultaneous landings became feasible because the communication infrastructure supported them. The technological advantage extended beyond individual skirmishes, affecting entire campaigns. It allowed the Allies to maintain initiative, exploit enemy weaknesses, and concentrate force at decisive points. The psychological impact on Allied soldiers was equally significant. Soldiers who knew they could contact command instantly, coordinate with neighboring units, or call for artillery or medical support experienced greater confidence and cohesion. This increased morale translated into more effective execution of orders, faster reaction times, and a reduced likelihood of confusion under fire. Soldiers felt empowered because they were connected, capable, and informed. The radios were not just tools, they were instruments of confidence, enhancing both effectiveness and resilience on the battlefield. The strategic lessons of these radios were clear. Information is as vital as firepower, and the ability to act on timely intelligence is decisive. The SCR-536 and SCR-300 demonstrated that technology could multiply the effectiveness of human effort, turning ordinary soldiers into coordinated, responsive units capable of achieving objectives previously thought impossible. In many cases, the radios allowed the Allies to outmaneuver, outthink, and outpace forces that might have been equal or even superior in numbers or equipment. The capture of radios by German forces in Sicily highlighted this disparity early in the war, but their full impact unfolded across years of global conflict. By the time of D-Day, the radios had been refined, deployed in massive numbers, and integrated into every aspect of Allied operations. The ability to coordinate land, sea, and air forces simultaneously gave the Allies an unprecedented operational advantage. It allowed for rapid adaptation to enemy tactics, minimized friendly fire incidents, and enabled continuous pressure on German and Japanese forces across multiple theaters. The success of these radios also underscores the broader significance of American innovation and industrial capacity. It was not enough to design a sophisticated device. It had to be mass-produced, durable, and accessible to ordinary soldiers. Engineers like Henryk Magnuski ensured that the radios were rugged, user-friendly, and reliable. American factories scaled production to meet the demands of a global conflict, equipping millions of troops with devices that gave them a decisive edge. This combination of invention, practical engineering, and industrial power turned a technological advantage into a strategic one. By the end of the war, it was evident that these small, portable radios contributed significantly to Allied success. They allowed forces to operate faster, respond to threats more effectively, and coordinate complex operations across great distances. The story of the SCR-536 and SCR-300 illustrates that in modern warfare, victory is not determined solely by guns or tanks, but by the ability to transmit and act on information with speed and precision. A 5-pound Handie Talkie or a 35-pound backpack radio could change the course of battles, demonstrating that communication technology was as powerful a weapon as any in the arsenal. The legacy of these radios extends far beyond World War II. They laid the foundation for modern military communications, influencing radio technology, battlefield coordination, and command strategies for decades. They remind us that innovation, when applied effectively and scaled intelligently, can redefine the rules of engagement. Soldiers in Sicily, Normandy, and the Pacific may have carried these radios into battle, but it was the combination of human ingenuity, industrial capability, and tactical application that allowed them to shape history. In the end, the SCR-536 and SCR-300 were more than tools. They were symbols of a new era in warfare, where information and connectivity determined success. The small radios that once surprised German officers in Sicily became instruments of victory, connecting soldiers across continents, amplifying their effectiveness, and helping to win a war that changed the world. The story of these devices is a testament to the power of technology, the vision of engineers, and the quiet but decisive role that communication plays in shaping the outcomes of history.